You're listening to The Echoes with me, Emily Andrew, the self-development podcast that explores personal stories, powerful tools, and an insight into the wide world of mental, physical, and spiritual health. Get ready to get curious, be inspired, and connect in. My guest this week is Martin Steger. He is a Cheltenham guy, just like me. He's a builder, a gym enthusiast, and most importantly, as you will hear from this conversation, his biggest passion is talking about raising awareness and living recovery from addiction and mental health struggles. Martin is clean and sober, and he'd like to use his own experience in addiction and now in recovery to help remove the stigma, the misleading conceptions of the workings of an addict and what actually addiction is. I found this whole conversation so interesting, and I was lucky enough to be on Dan and Martin's podcast talking about EFT. So I feel so grateful that Martin has come on and shared more about himself and his life with me. And I think it's really good to get lots of different viewpoints on addiction. And what better way than to have somebody who has lived it and experienced it and is currently doing all the work in recovery. So I'm really grateful for Martin for coming on. Here is our conversation. Thank you so much for being here. The tables have turned for us because last time you and I sat down to chat, you were actually interviewing me. So this is quite a fun little reverse role situation. But how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Nervous, as I always am, but yeah, excited to be here and see what comes out.
Me too, definitely. It's funny, isn't it? Because, essentially, podcasts like this is just two people sitting down and having a conversation. But I think sometimes, it feels like there is pressure to deliver or perform or that kind of thing, which can be, as as the host of having to run a podcast, there is that, but there is that as a guest as well. But I guess you're well versed in podcasting from what you've been up to.
Well, you'd say that. Well, you'd hope I was, but no, I still get equally nervous every time. Imposter syndrome and that kind of that pinch me feel it just before because you think, am I going to clam up? What am I going to say? And my experiences of what we're going to talk about is kind of so many people suffer from that. They to be able to be present in a moment and not really worry about the outcome of it before it happens is that's a gift in itself because it robs a lot of people of just being present in the moment. So we'll just see how it goes, see what comes up.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. So for people that have never seen you before or heard you, tell us a bit about you, what you do.
Well, so we met through a mutual friend who would do a podcast with, which is called The Long and Short of It, or Life, The Long and Short of It. It isn't out yet. It's in the middle of being edited and due to be released. It's recovery based. I'm in recovery. I'm an addict. I normally introduce myself at meetings as Martin. I'm an addict. And then a room full of people tell me my name back. And yeah, my journey or my aim in life was never to be an addict, but actually it's been the biggest gift I could ever wish for. Um, it explains the confusion that I live with, the delusion that I lived under, the spell of an illness that I didn't know I had. And once it was kind of put to me what it was I suffered from, life got a lot easier. That acceptance around that is something that not just myself, but a lot of others, but the lad I do the podcast with, just trying to put a different message out there, try and remove a lot of the stigma, like even the stigma that I carried around addicts, even though I was one. I thought an addict was someone that was on the streets and used certain drugs and was all they'd done. And, there's nothing to do with how you use and what you use. It's about how you think, being uncomfortable in your own skin and sensitive to life. And actually, a lot of times, drinking drugs starts as a solution for addicts. I now know that I thought and I acted like an addict way before I picked up my first drink or drug. And that was the one thing that surprised me the most. When I'm in a 12-step fellowship. I can't say which one because of traditions and stuff, but it was the first time I'd ever seen the way I thought on paper. I could never explain it to anyone. I was multiple people in a day. I got diagnosed with bipolar at one point and was on meds for that, and it was all just part of the illness. I would believe anything that my brain told me. I mean, why wouldn't you? Um, I believed my own lies, and manipulated people. Had cravings from the moment I woke up. It was more powerful than any consequence of not seeing any of my kids, or either of my two kids. Relationship breakdowns, losing jobs, getting in trouble with the police, losing licenses, financial debts, whatever it is, letting people down, hurting family members. The consequences stacked up, but I just got worse. And I didn't understand why. I really thought I was a bad person. And it took me to the point where the most peaceful thought I had was to end my life. And God willing, something saved me from that. But it was the first time that I'd given up. And it was only when I gave up trying to work out what was wrong with me and actually asked for help properly, that things started getting easier. So yeah, I'll leave it
There is
open to
so
you.
much. Yeah, there's so much that I'm so intrigued about, and I think you talk so eloquently and so brilliantly about the stuff that you've been through. What I wanted to first kind of talk about was this idea of like being an addict, because I know that a lot of people struggle with that, and then that in itself becomes such a huge question for some people. I know obviously I don't drink, and that is kind of by choice. And I think at one point I was trying to figure out, like, am I an alcoholic? And I know
Mm.
lots of other people that are choosing to go sober will offer that question. But it sounds like being able to find that, a label, for want of a better term, but that gave you something, like, it made sense to you. It sounds like
It
it
gave
sounds like it
me,
freed you.
yeah, it gave me an identity. I finally could identify the elephant in the room as such. I kind of try and explain my experiences of being me weren't fun. As a young lad, felt like the world had wronged me. Um, You'd have this own narrator in my head that wasn't very nice to me. Was always a pleaser. I could be in a room full of family and feel completely isolated. Just that sense of belonging. And I first kind of found that, or glamorized that idea when I saw my family drinking. I wanted that cheers moment. As a kid, I'd see my family drinking around the table, or my mum worked in pubs and my dad was often in the pub. He's a regular guy. He's a builder, played football at weekends and stuff like that. And my mum and my dad, they still drink. They can pick it up and put it down. But the euphoric moments I was seeing, they weren't laughing and joking because they were drinking. They were laughing and joking because they were friends. Like, it might have loosened them up a bit, but I automatically had latched all my hope onto arriving, or finding happiness through alcohol before I'd even picked it up. And then, when I got into drinking, it's like 16, 17, I'd smoked a bit of weed before that, and I always reacted differently to whatever I put into my body. I react differently. I have an allergy against anything mind altering. I didn't know that. But I take on all these different personalities. This is very quickly when I picked up a drink. I thought it made me funnier. I thought it made me braver. I thought it made me one of the lads. It made me more interesting. I thought it got me out of self, really. I'd spend so much time beating myself up that when I had a drink, I went numb at times, or I was able to join in. But when I look back, even at like 17, 18, I didn't want to go home. I was never content with any evening. I was never satisfied. Um, and that, kind of escalated because instead of just wanting a drink on a Friday or Saturday, I very quickly, even at 17, 18, would try and fit one in a week, to split the week up. And before I knew it, it was pretty much every day of the week. I wanted to go for a beer. And being a builder, you see a lot of builders in pubs after work. It kind of fits. The shoe fit. So I rode that storm for a long time. And I say a storm because even I was with people that dressed the same as me because they were builders. They didn't drink or think like me. They were happy to go home after 1 or 2 pints. And very quickly from a young age, people didn't want to drink with me. So I just find different crowds and stuff like that. And my consequences were always there. I'd always miss work and I'd always go more into self. I'd hide away for days on end, and I'd get my life back together. I'd go to the gym and whatever it was, and very quickly the wheels would fall off again. Um, I was never able to keep anything, and I couldn't work it out. And I don't know, it's because I was an addict. I was never going to be satisfied with whatever I had. There was an itch that couldn't be itched, and it moved on to harder drugs and stuff like that. And all that done was just kind of take me off into different directions. It didn't make my life better, but it just meant I got to disappear for longer periods. And again, I didn't know that. I had two children in amongst all that, one at 19 and one when I was in my mid-20s. And when other people grew up because of their life changed, I didn't. And I, again, didn't understand that. I thought that I must not love my kids enough. I must be unhappy in my relationship. So I blamed those things. I blamed jobs. I would think I was wronged as a kid. Like, there was a million and one excuses. And then when they ran out, kind of started then pointing the finger at myself. But instead of thinking it was a problem of drinking and taking drugs, I thought it was because I had some other mental illness. So I convinced the doctors and nurses over a 2-year period that I had bipolar. And they're really thorough with that. But I was that convinced that I had it, that I managed to convince them. And then I spent a year on tablets for bipolar, which obviously didn't make me better because I didn't have it. I was still drinking and using. I've gone through therapy. I've been to go through contact centres to see my kids. Been arrested countless times. I become everything I despised in a human being. And again, none of those consequences were ever enough to make me change. And I'd wake up in the morning with all these intentions of doing good by everyone, and my actions just are completely different. And it got me to a point that I was scared to leave the house. People think it was because I was lazy, I didn't want to go to work. It was because I didn't know what was going to happen. Like, when I got well from the last spree, that was when I knew it was going to happen again. But I couldn't join the dots. Didn't believe I was an addict. I just thought it was fucking mental, to be honest. I mean, why wouldn't you? And that story was just on loop, and it got progressively quicker and deeper and darker from the ages of 18 to 36. 18 months clean, God willing, and that's a miracle. I'm someone who couldn't stop thinking about couldn't stop thinking about taking drink or drugs, and now I don't think about that anymore. I really don't. That obsession has left me, and I'll try and carry a message today of hope and that change is available, and it doesn't matter what damage has taken place because of this stuff. There is a chance to change it all. You can make amends to people. You can take responsibility for the things that happen in active addiction, and you can get well. You can never be cured from it. I'm aware of that, but you can certainly be in a recovered state, and that to me is enough. I have to work a program on a daily basis. I meditate, pray, and I'm not religious. Praying to me is like just humbling myself. I know what hell looks like. I lived that. I was tortured by addiction. To be able to pray and get down on my knees in the morning just to thank whatever is out there just for another day sober. Like, if you haven't been through that, if you had, I'm sure you would pray too. And the meditation, it's a beautiful way of escaping your own thoughts, and connecting to something. And I've tried like the EFT with you and breath work, and I'm open to anything, now, because I just want to live. I spent so many years dead to the world. I was like flatlined internally. But the torture was waking up every day. And I didn't realize it takes courage to ask for help. That's like refusing to quit on living. And I didn't know that. And I think there's a lot of people in addiction, especially men, that are too afraid to ask for help because they think they've got to work it out for themselves. And it costs lives, a lot of them. I go to meetings 3 or 4 times a week, and there are always empty seats. There's always a funeral around the corner, and there's always a lot of people that don't even get in the rooms. And a lot of that is based around stigma and a lack of information. So I'm more than happy to kind of out myself without outing what fellowship I'm in. But I hope that my story and some of that suffering can be turned into hope for other families, because it is a family illness. No one has to suffer in silence, and that's why we recover loudly, so people don't.
Yeah, it's so important. I think when you talked about like God and not being religious, I was reading this book, and they say, like, if you don't like the idea of God, think of good orderly direction.
Yeah.
And I thought that that's quite a good way of, it's what it reminded me of.
So I got shown something when I went to rehab for a few weeks in the summer last year, and they showed us just like these scan pictures of the two people's brains. And by this point, I was fully aware that I had a thinking problem. It's a thinking illness, a disease, addiction. It's nothing to do with what substances you take. So at that point, it was like, well, how do you change those neural pathways? How do you create something different going on? And they said the only way that these certain parts of your brain are lit up is when people meditate or pray. And that to me was enough. I was like, if that's going to give me a chance of getting better, I don't have to understand it. Because I don't understand why I'm ill. I don't understand the illness of addiction. I just know I've got it. So that when I say about being humble enough, it's like, well, if that gives me a shot at another day and another day and another day, then I'll do it. And that's it. I try not to overthink stuff. I just want to live. That's it.
Yeah. I've done quite a lot of like research because I find it fascinating, and yeah, the brain stuff is just that. It's incredible. And I think you're right, though. It's not about necessarily needing to understand, but it's needing to understand the things that help you. And that sounds like what you've done, which is amazing. You mentioned, you started drinking about 16, and from 18 to 36, you were in that loop. It sounds like for you, there was no middle ground. It was kind of black and white, there were always these cycles. Is that the case, or did you go through a period of being able to function?
My idea of functioning was to not cause absolute carnage for a week or 2 weeks. Like that was my limit, truthfully, from the age of 18 onwards. I managed to get at one point during the start of lockdown, I got about 9 or 10 weeks without taking drink or drugs, but I was drinking like 8 or 9 non-alcoholic drinks a day. My addict behavior had gone into hiding money around the house. Just mental. Like you hear it a lot in the rooms. It's that an addict gets unwell when they put the drinking drugs down because the drinking drugs aren't a problem; they're the solution. Like I've got a thinking problem. I've got all these defects. I'm naturally selfish, self-seeking. I'm irritable and restless. I'm highly sensitive to life. I'm manipulative. I try and control things that are out of my control. Like those are my natural defects. Like a TV, when you unplug it, it goes back to default. Like if I stop doing this stuff, that's where I go. I get unwell quick. And trying to get out of self through something mind altering, but that could even be something like gambling. It could be sex. It can be working out. It can be steroids. Whatever it is, I'm sensitive to all those things. I have to live an abstinent life. I have to live a life of discipline. I have to live a life of honesty. It's a beautiful life. Once you accept it, it's all the things I ever really dreamt of. I just didn't know how unwell I was. It's the only disease I know known to man that will tell you haven't got it. Like, how do you deal with that? That's why I think about talking about this stuff. Is so many people only get to the rooms or get to rehab or wherever it is after years and years and years of suffering. Now, if there was more awareness around it and it was more of an open topic, because it's not abnormal to be an addict. It's not. There's too many people for it to be abnormal. If it was a complete rarity, there wouldn't be rehab centres all over the place. There wouldn't be meetings all over the place. There wouldn't be people on the streets all over the place. This is the pandemic that no one's talking about. And it's if I thought like this, and I had these issues before I picked up a drink and a drug, then actually I could have probably done with some help around meditation or EFT or breath work or understanding the way the mind works, probably when I was at school. Because I had a problem with being me from a young age. Trying to get people to open up about how they're feeling instead of prevention, instead of reaction. There's so much that can be worked on. We always seem to try and deal with things once the catastrophe has happened and too many people lose their lives. And I don't know how you change that. I don't, but I think being honest about what roads and what days have led me to this one, is probably a start.
One thing I'm interested to hear more about is you've said like get out of self.
Yeah.
What is self? Because I know that people actually try and find self, but it sounds like it's a different thing for you. What is self?
There's a difference between self and being. Like, being is just accepting the world for how it is. It's not trying to narrate or control what's going on around you. And it's not having that nagging voice and telling you in the back of your head that you're not enough, or getting resentful about someone not doing the washing up, or uh, getting up in the morning and catastrophizing that there's going to be an accident on the road, or I don't know, like chasing money, or whatever it is. That's being in self. You're not being present. Like, if you leave life alone, it's just going to get by all right without you. And that's being. Like, when you kind of take part, when just having a seat at the table is enough, like, you're out of self. You know, if I've got a problem with, I don't know, with everyone around the table, with what they're eating, with how much the food is, or what they're drinking, or what time it is, or how long the service has been, I'm probably not very present in that moment. I'm completely stuck in my own head, trying to direct or be ungrateful for whatever's going on. You know, someone you could say at that same table is sat there enjoying the food, is kind of taking the surroundings in, is interested in how others are. You know, that's the big one, thinking of others. You know, that's being out of self. You know, I would wake up every day on like just thinking about me. It's the most selfish disease going, because everyone else suffers, but you know, you're the only one who gets to escape it because you're high off your tits on drugs, or pissed up, or sorry for swearing, but you know, that's the selfishness of it. You carry the disease, but you spend so long out of reality that when you come back round, you're completely baffled as to why no one trusts you, why everything's gone, and that's because you've been stuck in here.
Hmm. This is my podcast, so there is swearing galore, so you don't
Yeah,
have to worry about apologising
happy
for
days.
that. So it's a bit like it sounds like it's a bit like ego, like
Oh,
that
massively,
kind
yeah.
of ego
Mm.
state. Thank you for explaining that. It makes total sense. You mentioned that you had this loop going on, and in that loop, I'm sure that there was lots of different moments. You've kind of already said people losing trust with you, you know, having to see your children. So, did you say supervised?
Yeah, with my son,
Yeah,
yeah, when he was younger, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So having to go through like those kind of things, losing relationships.
Mm.
What was for you the thing that changed? Was it after the experience that you had when you felt like that was the most peaceful moment, or was it something else? What was the change for you?
What, that moment, that kind of the game changer.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was a lots of different scenarios. Partner at the time, well, partner again now, but at the time, it had enough. She was the one that got ruined the most by all of this. I was caused so much worry, and destruction. Um, and she kicked me out for like third or fourth time within a couple of years. And every time I meant all these promises, I won't do it again, I won't do that. But still, like, not believing what I was saying, but just lip service, but not realizing I was manipulating it. Like, you get that unwow that you can say one thing at 11 o'clock. By 12 o'clock, you're in the pub. By 2 o'clock, you're apologising. You don't know how it's happened. Um, and I basically had months of really trying to stop. I mean, probably 6 months. And actually, it's a common theme that when you really realise that you cannot stop taking drink and drugs, and you really, really want to stop, that's when you get really ill. I become absolutely insane. I was waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock every morning. I was back living at my dad's, and he had a gym at the bottom of the garden. And I'm sure you won't mind me saying it, but Becca gave me this book about Be a Lion, and it was about, you know, there's hyenas, there's sloths, and there's lions, and it was about trying to, you know, go and get what you want out of your life. So at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm going into this little gym about my dad's garden because I can't stop obsessing about drinking drugs. I know I don't want to do it, but it won't leave my head. And I'm like shouting in this gym on the static bike, "Be a lion, be a lion." And I've had a few laughs with lads about that, like, since, because it must have been absolutely insane if the neighbours heard or whatever. But that went on for months, like, and I'd get like a week where I wouldn't take drink or drugs. I'd get up absolutely knackered, go to work, um, come back, almost lock myself in the house, make all these promises. I'm not going to do it again. Not going to do it again. And somewhere within a week, I'd just gone, and it was like autopilot. It was like I was just a bystander in a crime. You know, the crime was it was robbing me of my life and my family, and I swear I couldn't stop it. And I'd be even more baffled, and I'd fight it even harder, and it sent me absolutely nuts. And it literally that after 6 months of that, I didn't say I came to a decision, but a decision was made, where I needed to end my life. I knew that I'd accepted I was just going to keep doing the same thing. Didn't matter how much I didn't want it to happen. I couldn't look my kids in the eyes, my family's nothing, and promise them I wasn't going to do it again. I couldn't. It's the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. And death seemed alright. I was already dead. I'd lost everything, my sanity included, and I didn't want to be that person. I didn't, and I felt so disconnected from my childhood. I'd tarnished everything. Like, I'm grateful I managed to find recovery and be like over a year clean and sober before my gran passed away. She's like a second mum to me, and I lost so many years with my family, children included, but it wasn't my choice. I definitely had a choice in taking drinking drugs at the start, I did, but when I look back for probably 10 years or more, I lost that power of choice. It was just progressive of how much I was using, how much I was thinking about it. And that explained so much as to why that things would happen continuously, and I was baffled. I honestly was baffled at the consequences of my using, whether it was cheating on my partner, whether it was fights, we're not turning up to work, letting my children down, not turning up to school to pick them up. I become a really bad human being. You know, I just didn't know I was unwell. I think everyone else had an idea, and that was how deluded I was. You know, I wouldn't listen to it, and I don't know how or why my family stood by me. I look back, I don't know how they did it. I don't. I sponsor lads now that are in active addiction and try and give away what I was freely given, and it's painful. You know, there's a lad that I say too much, but a lad that I'm close to, he's gone back out there. You know, he's going to spend Christmas homeless and back in the madness of it all, and it's hurt. It hurts. It's like a dagger through the heart. You know, and it's just someone I know through recovery. You know, he's not my son, he's not my partner or whatever. I haven't got those connections. So God only knows how much suffering families go through. So the podcast and me talking today about it isn't just for addicts, it's for the families. I actually think the families suffer more. And they don't get the program at the end of it either. Kind of see you get well and hopefully, and you can kind of explain it a bit, but they're never going to understand it. So, you know, I'm hoping again this can help those as well. You know, like that confusion around what it is, because if the addict thinks they've got a choice in it, then the family does as well. And it's not until you get into recovery that you realise that that's what an addict is when you're powerless over it. You lose all choice and manageability around your thoughts.
I think you said about like you don't know why, or you can't. It's that not understanding like how people can put up with that, and I think because from what you said, it sounds like you had such a low opinion of yourself, of who you are, because of the things that you've done, because of the way that you thought. You know, you talked about, you know, feeling like you're selfish, but our families, the people close to us, they have that unconditional love, and they can see the actual person behind that stuff. Like they can see you sometimes better than you can see yourself.
Yeah, I didn't see myself, and I actually didn't answer your question. What was the moment? And it was accepting death. That was the moment. It sounds daft, but that surrender was the moment. I'd given up trying to work it out, and I let someone else do the thinking for me. And yeah, you're talking about not seeing yourself. I couldn't look in the mirror, and everything inside me was black. Like that's how it felt. It was just. That's how it gets you. It takes you away from your family, it isolates you, and it comes back for you last. You know, it's a painful existence. but there is a solution to it. There is, it's not all doom and gloom. I live a life beyond my wildest dreams now. I really do. I wake up the spring in my step. I get up at 5 most days, go to the gym, go to work with family, go to 3 or 4 meetings a week, speak to addicts every day. Got my best friends are in recovery. I have a great time. I went to take my son to Magaluf in October, 3 or 4 days. We went up the strip. I was drinking lemonade, dancing away. Like that, the fact that my identity doesn't need drink and drugs anymore is the most rewarding thing. I can do anything. I can go to any pub or whatever I wish to, as long as my intentions are right. I'm aware now that drink and drugs are not for me, and I never needed them. That's the beauty of it. You do get a life. I never had one before. I turn it to work every day now. Save money. My kids trust what they see. I don't let them down. I listen. I can read my children books now, or my youngest. My lad, who can drop him off to he does like MMA and that, take him to there and have his girlfriend and himself round for food on a Sunday, and I cook roast dinner. I can be a dad. That's more than any money or a lottery ticket, because they were all the things I couldn't do. Didn't matter how much I wanted to, I couldn't. I'd try, but somewhere or somehow within a very short amount of time, I'd fuck it all up, and it would be gone. And people do. They get bored. They get bored of you, because they don't know what's going to come back. That unpredictability. People suffer, and yeah, you don't have to.
So you had this kind of moment of change, realization, rock bottom, whatever it's called, whatever we call it, but
yeah.
What did you do? What was, how did you go from that moment to now? What were the things that have really helped you? You've mentioned a few of them already, but
before I went into rehab, I had to wait 5 weeks. My dad lent me the money to go, but I'm self-employed, and my cousin at the time had gone on holiday to Canada. So my dad was like, not really understanding the crux of it all, but it was like, look, if you can carry on working for 5 weeks, I'll lend you the money to go to rehab. You go to rehab for a couple of weeks, come back straight to work, and then you can pay me back the money. But yeah, but what happened was that I didn't pick up a drink or drug somehow. In that 5 weeks, I was left with with life, all the raw emotions. My thinking was on me all the time. I'd gone even more nuts. And that was a blessing, because by the time I got to rehab and they told me I had a thinking problem, not using problem, I was like, that makes fucking sense, because I'm nuts. I'm even more nuts when I don't drink or take drugs. I actually get a bit of respite when I take drink or drugs, because I'm out of it. I listened. I accepted for what I was. I accepted the illness for what it is. And I didn't try and run away from the solution. I knew that when I left rehab, I wasn't going to leave there fixed. I did think when I went there that I might get some serious help, like to change me, and actually I did. I got a reality check. That was the biggest eye opener. I thought CBT or something, like, I thought I had behavioural problems, and it was, no, again, you're overcomplicating it. You're just fucked. You got a thinking problem. You're going to drink and use again unless you go and do it. Live within a program of recovery. And that was really daunting, but actually really exciting. I tried working all these things. I'd Google all the mad shit you can imagine, trying to find out what was wrong with me. I used to write journals and stuff, and they were like just tainted, full of delusion. So the fact I didn't have to work anything out, and all I had to do was go to meetings, get a sponsor, do what was suggested, go through the steps, be brutally honest, out myself for all my weird thinking, all my weird behaviour, go and make amends to family, go and listen to people for a start, instead of trying to tell them what my problem was. Let me listen to what damage I'd caused. Pray, meditate, go live a spiritual life, humble myself, go and help some other people. Like, that's all I've done. It's nothing to do with, it's nothing special that I've done. I've just put the work in the direction I was pointed at. The podcast stuff is a little bit of an extension of that, but it's not because me and the other lad Dan have got anything special or unique. We're just willing to talk about our experiences in the hope that it saves one or two people.
I would argue that everybody has something special and unique.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you guys, I think what you're doing is brilliant, and I think it is something that people don't talk about, and a lot of people don't understand. I think if you haven't been in that situation, you can't really understand it. And I think, although, like I said right at the beginning, people are questioning their relationship with alcohol, I think that there is a very big difference between somebody who is an addict and somebody who has got a problem with, a certain substance, if that makes sense. I think they blend quite well, but I think that there are distinctions, and the way that you talk about it is so easy to understand. And I think that that's something that's really vital for people to hear.
I think if I was a problem drinker or a problem user, the problem would stop when I put either of them down. The fact that I get worse tells me and is explained to me in recovery that that's why I'm an addict, because it's got nothing to do with the substances. My life should get better and my thinking should improve if it was just about the drink and the drug. It doesn't. If your experience is you put drinking drugs down, your life improves, you probably have a problem with drinking drugs. But if you're like me, and if you're not taking drink, you're not taking drugs. When I'm in active addiction, I mean, but then instead I'm replacing that by gambling, or I'm replacing that by, I had an addiction to food at one point. I was working away with my family in Devon, and I couldn't drink and use in the week because I was with family, locked off away from like the world really, because we're middle of nowhere. So I replaced it with food. I got massive. I know that the problem it's me. I didn't know that before, but I was blind to it. But as soon as it's explained, I just look back on my life and I'd be like, bloody hell, yeah. It's crystal clear. Once it's explained what addiction is. If I was told it was just about drinking drugs, I'd probably still be out there using.
There is always so much behind, I think, any habit, like relationship. There's always so much, and it's so personal to each person as well. But being able to find that structure, I think, because I think a lot of people, when they hear about AA, or there are other things out there that I'm not clued up on, but that kind of thing, there's almost again, probably a little bit of having an opinion without really understanding it at all, a bit of fear, a bit of I think there is that for some people. But actually, I mean, I've been to one meeting like years ago just to see. It was when I first stopped drinking, and it wasn't quite for me. But I think having that community and having that kind of, this is what we do, you have responsibilities for yourself and for other people. There's probably a lot of people that really misunderstand it. Did you have any misconceptions that you found were totally blown out of the water, or was it just kind of quite a natural thing for you to kind of come out of rehab and go into something like that?
Definitely not. I went to the fellowship I'm in, which isn't AA or NA, it's another one. I first went to the meeting 7 or 8 years ago. I went to one meeting, I heard the word God and it's in the scrolls, and just thought, okay, he's like nuts. Like, they must have it really bad, like, to be coming to these meetings. One of the lads took my number, contacted me a few days later. I thought I was being groomed. You know what I mean? Ed on me. I think I probably went to my first meeting, then went straight to the pub after and spoke about how weird it all was. Because I didn't know I was unwell. Like, why would you want to go to one of those meetings if you didn't think you're an addict or suffered? And that's the sad thing, is a lot of people have to suffer so much before they're open to the idea. Because a lot of addicts have that ego, that delusion that they haven't got a problem. But yeah, by the time I got into the rooms, it felt like home, because they were talking about things that I'd experienced. It's the first time I'd been in a room of people where I felt fully accepted. I didn't feel like the odd one out. I go to a guy, like, just an example, my dad in the end would refuse to go, rightly so, would refuse to go for a pint with me on a Friday. And I always thought he was weird, because he would go for a pint and have two, as he said he was going to, go get some fish and chips and go home. I would promise him that I would go to the pub on a Friday and have one or two and then I'd leave. But after the first one, I'd already made it cool, and I was
angry about the idea of leaving by the end of the second. The reason I point that out is that I'd never met anyone prior to that or could relate to that thought the way I did. I thought there was something wrong with everyone else. Couldn't work out why everyone else was able to get by with having just a beer or whatever. So to be into a fellowship with people that suffered the same way I did mentally, with their thoughts and the same cravings, which I now understand are cravings, was a relief. I could out myself to them without being, looking like I was going to get shot or like as if I needed locking up in a straitjacket. They're beautiful, beautiful places, recovery, rehab centres and all that sort of stuff. It's doctors and nurses and scientists have been trying to work out alcoholism and addiction for years, and they've never even got close to, well, I'm aware anyway, of really understanding it. And you almost seems need to have experienced addiction to have an understanding. And majority of the people that get clean from it, the only ones that do really are the ones that work a 12-step program. And that again is insane. It seems nuts that a program based around spirituality, praying, meditation, going helping other people. But I suppose if you break it down, when you look at all those old practices from all around the world, a lot of them have just been lost in time. I think it's actually quite natural to think of others, to humble yourself, to be out of self or whatever it is. And I'm grateful that for whatever reason I now live this life I do. It's sad for my family that they had to suffer as much as they did, and I suffered too. But I'm grateful today. I really mean that. I've had some beautiful, beautiful experiences in recovery. Just going to the beach and stuff with my kids, but going for walks on my own. Really feeling connected to nature and being at one with the world. And that might sound hippie-fied for others, and maybe it is, but I'm cool with it. I know that someday I'm going to take my last breath, and by doing this stuff, I believe it's my best chance of having a life worth remembering. I don't want to be tortured on my deathbed thinking about what if. So I'm really pleased with this chance at living. So.
Yeah, I think you've got so much to share, and I think the way that you talk about it, I think it's really unique and needed and honest. So thank you.
Cheers, Ben. Cheers for having me on.
I wanted to, there's two more things that I wanted to say. One is, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, how would people know if you weren't okay anymore?
Me? I'd be erratic. I'd be quite... I'm completely different. I'm selfish. I am really aggressive, to talk to. I am rash with my responses. I won't listen to you. I'll get lazy. Start spending money irrationally is one of the earlier signs. Looking for arguments. Like, my defective character come out way before my experiences are with other people in recovery of relapse stuff. Is that those defects come out way before. Like, if I stop going to meetings, stop doing my daily routines, stop being honest, just clear as day indications. This is how serious I take this stuff. Is that if I'm too tired and I know I've got to go upstairs and I've got to do my nightly infantry and my prayers and all this stuff, which I do every day, I'll sleep downstairs because I know if I get up off the sofa, I've got to go up before I get into bed. I've got to do this nightly routine, and it's almost like accepting that I'm too tired to do that infantry. It's just like, why are you not moving then? And it's like, but as soon as I wake up at 3-4 in the morning, before I get into bed, still I will get down on my knees. I do my infantry. I pray and that, because I know what that life is, the other side of it, and I know it's waiting for me if I put this stuff down. I know I get on well quick. Like, it's just obvious. It will be obvious to everyone, I think. I will be an absolute nightmare. So, yeah.
At the end of the podcast, I always ask people, it's called The Echoes. So if you could leave a message in the echoes that is going to be out there for anyone to listen to at any time,
Okay.
what would yours
No
be?
pressure then. I would say the beauty that I've learned of it, it's so important to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Blind faith is needed, because you never, my experience is, you can never see where it is you're heading. You never believe that you're going to get there, and it's that blind faith, and that takes courage. You know, taking that one step into the unknown normally is the one step that changes your life. Think big. Think big.
Thank you so much. I will put more information in the show notes so people can find you and keep an eye out for the podcast, which is going to be so exciting. I know that you and Dan have put so much into it, so I'm really excited to see you share it to the world.
Cheers,
because it's definitely needed and very vital. So
right, cheers, and thanks for giving me the time to speak. I haven't waffled too much. God knows what I've said, so be interesting to find out. Cheers.
If you struggle with addiction, some of the topics covered in this podcast might feel quite confronting. And if you need extra support, please make sure that you reach out to somebody. There are so many people like you. There are so many people similar to you. And there are so many people that want to help and understand. So please make sure that you're reaching out if you can. I look forward to seeing you next time on The Echoes.